Hey everybody, welcome to my new video. This time I want to make this fantasy crystal-like scene that I've done recently, but I want to make it smaller in scope so you can follow along. And if you're new to the channel and you like this kind of content, please hit that subscribe button and that bell button so you get notified when I release something new. So let's get to it and let's get started with the scene. First of all, let's define our scene by adding a plane. Then tab into the edit mode and let's press S and then 4 to scale 4 times and extrude this a little bit. So press E and extrude. So this will be a base for our scene and we can go ahead and create a circle here. So shift right click, shift A, add a circle, but don't forget to modify the number of vertices. I think something like 24 will be enough here. So let's do that and let's scale this up. And yeah, now we can tab out, press G, then shift Z and move it a little bit here so it doesn't go all the way to the edges. And right now we can tab back in and press F to fill, then I, and do an inset like this and delete the faces. So now if you select all with A and extrude, you get this nice shape. And right now we can play along with this, so alt click here and press double G to slide it a little bit, maybe here outside as well, but first maybe make one more here, alt click the loop here, alt E, extrude along normals to get some structure there, and now alt click here and move this, go to the face select by pressing 3, alt click, insert this little bit and extrude. So I think this will be enough for a start, but I want this to go down, so we want to make a hole here, and it's really easy to do with this, but there will be a plane serving as a background under the whole scene. So shift S, cursor to world origin, let's add a plane, and right now we can scale this out something like this. We can modify that later. And right now I want to select this object, go into the edit mode, edge select, alt click this loop and press shift D to duplicate and P to separate. Find the new object. It should be named similarly, just with the number suffix. And right now we can tab in, select all and extrude on the Z axis. And right now we can press F to close this, select all, move it a little bit down. You can see we have a nice cylinder, so let's close this side as well, so alt click F. And right now I want to recalculate normals, so select all and press shift N in case we flipped some of those. Select the terrain object and we can do a Boolean operation where we will subtract the cylinder from the terrain object, and you can do it manually, but if you enable Bool tools add-on, you can do it as simple as pressing Ctrl-. So let's select this one and press Ctrl-, and you can see we have a nice opening there, but we want it to go all the way through. So let's select the plane, go into the edit mode, top view, and let's do inset like that. We can switch to the wireframe view and move it here, maybe make it a little bit smaller. And now just press X and delete faces. So all we have to do to modify this further is to make this go down below. So select the bottom face and drag it down. And right now we can select this Boolean object, and by selecting the bottom face we can now determine the depth of that Boolean operation. So I think something like this will be enough. Right now I want to have rocks here and some crystals. Press shift A and create a round cube. If you don't have this option here, you can enable add-on extra objects or simply create cube, then add some subdivision modifier to it and apply that modifier. So let's just go with the round cube. Right now we can make the subdivisions smaller like this, and we can go into the local view by pressing slash on the numpad. Now tab into the edit mode, Let's scale this a little bit, and we have a base for our rock. Now there's one tool we can use, and that's a bisect tool. So if you go here where the knife is, you can switch this to bisect. If you look from some angle and drag across the object, you can do a slice and then move this around this way. And now we can check the clear outer option and fill, so it's a closed object. And right here you can see we have some nice planar cut, and we can combine multiple of these cuts. So when it's done, you can just click away and select all, because you have to select the geometry you want to bisect. And right now you can drag again, and again we can just click this and move it around to see what works best for this object. Okay, right now I really like how this looks, so we can move it in place somewhere. And I want some larger rock formation here, so we can just place the rock somewhere here and then duplicate it around. But first I want to modify the terrain a little bit, because right now it's just a cube. So let's go to the face select the top face and subdivide a few times, or you can modify the number here for the number of cuts. We can just go to the wireframe view, select the bottom vertices, hide them, and now we can free to manipulate the object without actually distorting its shape. So yeah, let's just select this, enable proportional editing with the smooth fall off, press G then Z, and you can adjust the fall off with the mouse wheel. So let's make just some small adjustments and maybe some larger ones here in the back to make the terrain a little bit more interesting, something like this. And to give it a little bit more variation, you can go to the random and modify this a little bit so it's a bit distorted. But be careful about moving to the side. You can see I'm moving with G and Z, and that's because I really don't want to distort the side endgons too much. So this will work nicely as a terrain, and now we can select all and maybe triangulate that. So press Ctrl T, so it has that nice triangular shape for the faces. And right now we can select the rock and bring it out a little bit, press Alt D and duplicate it around, press R twice, rotate, make larger, and now you get my point. You can just modify these around to find some variations so it doesn't really look like the same object again and again. With this type of object it's pretty easy and straightforward to do. There's not much there. So yeah, just move it around. Okay, I really like how this turned out, so let's maybe just distribute some smaller rocks around the scene, and we can enable snapping for that on the face. And right now we can just scale them and move them around. Okay, now we'll make some crystals, and that'll be pretty easy to do. So just place cursor somewhere, shift right click, press shift A, And let's add a cylinder, and let's modify the number of vertices to something like 6. Tab in, S Shift Z, and let's make this smaller a little bit, and we can turn off proportional editing. We don't need it right now, and we can grab this up a little bit. Okay, and now we can just select this face and do an inset, and now press Alt M and merge at center and move the new vertex up a little bit, and now move these by pressing G twice or GZ, and move them around. So we have some nice variation. And of course we can do a cut here, so we can do Ctrl B, then V, and Ctrl T to triangulate. So we have some nice interest there. Here as well. And we can make things a little bit more interesting by doing some of these bevels here and there. So I think this will work nicely as some kind of crystal, and we can now move it and place it with the rocks. But before, I want to make it a little bit taller, so something like that. Okay. And as you can see, the origin point is a little bit too high, so let's look from the front wireframe view. Let's move it higher, and now in the object mode down, so the pivot point is actually there. So when we scale this, it behaves properly as we need. So yeah, Alt D, and now just duplicate these around, and every time rotate them a little bit and scale. Okay, and right here in the middle of this object, I want to have like a large levitating crystal. That'll be the main focus of our scene. So press Shift S and cursor to select it. And right now we can add another cylinder right here and make it a little bit smaller, a little bit taller maybe. Something like this. And right now we can use either a beveling or bisect tool. It's totally up to you. I will try using a bisect tool for this central object, because I really want to have more control over how that turns out. Okay, that's quite all right, and maybe we can finish with some bevels here and there, like this, to make some smaller flat surfaces, some details that our eye can rest upon when you're looking at the object. Yeah, right now I want to make the same thing here at the bottom, but I really don't want to do that all over again. So let's just go into the local view, press face select, delete the face, and right now we can select this loop, bring it up, bring the whole object up in the edit mode a little bit, so we are over the origin point, and let's add the mirror modifier right here and switch from X to Z, enable clipping and move it down a little bit. So we have a nice object here, and we can move it down so it can levitate in its place. And I will now create a camera so we can have a better look of what we actually created. So I will use the ISOCAM plugin. You can find the link in the description and install it. It's pretty easy. You just go to the edit preferences, and then you will see this install button, and you click it and navigate to the Python file that you will download from the link, and it will install the ISOCAM for you. You can then just activate it, and you will have this button here on the right side, and you can click, for example, the game ISO cam and create some nice isometric camera right away. Let's modify the resolution here so we have a different ratio, and I want to move the camera up a little bit. So this will be basically our final composition, and if you want to change the composition, that's really easy with the booleans. So you just select the ring, the crystal and the boolean object, press S and scale them out. You will see the boolean object dynamically cuts out from the terrain, so you have perfect control. And right now we just have to make sure that this still works. So maybe let's make it a little bit larger, like that. Okay, and we can now create some more interesting details, but first I want to modify this a little bit so it's not so thick. Let's move it up a little bit and snap the cursor there, so Shift S cursor to select it. Right now we can add a circle here with just maybe 12 segments or something. Tab in and extrude on Z a little bit. Right now select all, move it down just a tiny bit, and we can select like some of these faces and delete them like that. Select all, press Alt E and extrude along normals. So you can do some more cuts with Control R and actually extruding some of these parts a little bit, so it gives it like that a little bit technical feeling to this whole thing. You can go to the local view, maybe extrude some of them down. Okay, just like that. Okay, now we can exit the local view, tab out, and maybe do Alt D to duplicate, right click to release, make it a little bit larger, and then rotate. So you can have some like nice interest to the scene, some nice variation very easily without too much hassle. And right here we can maybe modify this even further to add some more visual interest there, to make it a little bit more like sophisticated or something. And I really like this, but I feel like there will be some foliage missing in the scene. So let's create some quick leaves. Let's shift right click here to place the cursor, Shift A, create a new plane. Now make it much smaller, go to the local view. Right here we can just do 2 cuts and shape this to look like a leaf. Okay, now look from the side by pressing 3. Go to wireframe, so you can select all of these and bring this up a little bit, and now select all and move this so the pivot point is actually here. And now just rotate this a little bit, move it here. Let's make some further adjustments. And now we can switch the pivot point to 3D cursor. So hold period and switch here, or you can do the same thing here. And right now just select all, Shift D, R, Z, and rotate, make it smaller. Shift D, R, Z, rotate and make it smaller. You can maybe even scale this a little bit, and it's all according to the 3D cursor, so you're safe here. Maybe rotate a little bit. And remember, you can press L, hovering over something that's the separated mesh. Okay, and maybe some smaller as well. Now go to the solid view, exit the local view, press period so you can focus on the object, and you can make this larger. And now if you try to snap this, so press G, and then if you hold Control, you can snap it. If it's too high up, you can always go into the edit mode, press G, Z twice, and move it a little bit lower so the origin point is higher. But I don't think it's necessary here, so just press G, then Control, scale this, Alt D to move it somewhere else. Let's switch back to the medium point, press R twice to enable trackball rotation. Okay, but if you think that's too flat, you can always like add some solidify modifier to that or something, but I don't think it's necessary right here. I think this will be totally enough, and we can proceed right now to some shading, lighting, and render out the scene. Okay, let's switch to the material preview, camera view, and right now we can add some material to our background. So create a new material, let's call this background, and right now make it just black so the other things stand out, and select the terrain. Let's name this ground, and I want it to look like sand, so choose some color like this maybe, and then select the rocks, give it the ground material, but now you can duplicate this and make it darker. So we have the similar shade, and we are not going too far from the palette, but at the same time it's much darker, maybe not so much. And here we want to give some green color to those leaves, so create material for that. And I like this like a pastel green with a little bit of a blue inside it. I think it gives a little bit of a tropical feel to that. And here we can create some metallic material for this structure, or you can go with the rocks, so it's totally up to you what you want to create. I will try to do it like this. And let's create some like a gold or bronze material there. Okay, and I feel we had rocks here, so let me check. Yes, but then we enlarged the object, so they got hidden. Sorry for that. Okay, I really like this. Right now we can give this some emission, so that's why I created this inset there. So create a new material slot, new material, let's call this light. Switch from principled to emission shader. Right now select the blue color, and let's try something like 5 or 10. Let's try 10 and click assign. So they'll add some nice futuristic fantasy feel to that. And let's add some bronze material here as well. Okay, and let's create that crystal material. So let's call this crystal, and I want to use subsurface scattering here. So first of all, let's just select some light blue color like this, and then you can see there is a subsurface value and subsurface color. And what it does actually, it accounts for the light that gets absorbed by the material and scattered around, and it's used like for the skin and some translucent objects and stuff. So yeah, let's bring this all the way up, and let's switch this to some stronger blue. Let's go to the render settings and enable ambient occlusion, bloom, screen space reflection, and subsurface scattering is enabled. So if you look from the side, you can see that the shading on this is a little bit different. There are like a blurred edges, and that's why and that's because there is actually that scattering underneath, and the effect is much more stronger in cycles. So we'll leave it like this. Right now we can go back to the material settings and let's enable some transmission. So I want to go something like 0.8, so it's translucent, and the roughness to something like 0.3, and let's actually bring down the transmission to 0.5, so it's not that translucent. And right now select one of the crystals here and add material there too. So that's basically all about the materials for this scene, and now it will all go down to lighting. So let's go to the camera view. First I want to press Ctrl B and limit the rendering preview to just this rectangle. Press Shift S, cursor to world origin, and add the light, area light. Let's bring this up, make it a little bit larger. And right now let's switch to the 3D cursor, RX 45 degrees minus, RZ 45 degrees, so we have it facing right across the camera. And right now we can give it like a really strong value to something like 1500 or so, and let's enable scene lights and scene world, and you can already see the nice backlight it will create on these crystals. So let's give it some like a yellow color to really enforce that desert feeling. And right now I want to use 2 more lights, so it's properly lighted from the side as well. So Shift D, RZ, and rotate this, and if you RXX twice you can move it like that, and maybe move on the Z axis like that, make it larger. And again, we're just looking for some nice reflection. You can already see on these crystals how the lights affects them, and that's what you are looking for. Whether you want to have more visible reflections from the side there, it's like a more dramatic and it feels much more three-dimensional, and the more you go from the front, the more flat the scene will look like. So I always try to find some balance here, and right now we can move this on the other side as well, and maybe make it fall a little bit more flat on the scene, but press Z twice and move it out so it's a little bit lighter. And one last thing I like to do is of course to set the world lighting to something else, to have that little ambience that will like glue all of it together. And if you add some value to that and set some strong blue color, you will see how the shadows are actually filled with some nice light ambience. And we can go to the render color management, set this to something like medium high contrast, and bring the exposure up a little bit. Okay, and I really want these lights to be more orange, so you can see how it creates these nice gradients between the yellow, purple, and towards the blue from the world lighting. And here we can maybe make it more orange as well, but not that much actually. So yeah, I really like this result. We can now go ahead and switch this to the cycles render. Don't forget to switch the GPU if you have one, and let's preview this. Okay, I can see right away that we need to adjust the world lighting a little bit, make it a bit stronger. And one last thing that misses here is some contextual point lights here and there to make the scene look a little bit more interesting. So let's snap the cursor here, add the point light, and maybe we can leave the point light inside the crystal so it will shine like from the inside. And let's give it some strong value and some color, and let's see what that does. Yeah, I think it does really nice scattering inside the crystal, but it doesn't have to be so strong, so something like 500 will be probably enough. Okay, and right now we can Shift D the light and move it somewhere here between the crystals. And if we now look from the preview, you will see it will create that nice light scattering there and some nice visual interest, and that's what I'm going for right now. So you can go wild here and try like different light setups with these point lights, try different colors, whatever you want to make this look more interesting and more appealing. Okay, so this is the fantasy crystal scene for you. I hope you really enjoyed it and you liked it. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe and that bell button so you get notified when I release something new. And remember, I have a Patreon where I host more than 100 files like this, more than 100 scenes like this. You can download them, browse them, have a look at how the lighting is made, how the objects are constructed. So if you really want to inspect my scenes and the things that I'm doing, go ahead. There's a $7 Patreon there. I think it's pretty reasonable for more than 100 scenes, so go check it out and let me know what you think. And thank you all for watching and have a wonderful day.